Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samelin, Principal Samelin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud Lawyers Who Care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Margaret Donohoe. She is a partner in Donohoe Talbert in New York City, and Margaret has been practicing exclusively in the field of matrimonial family law since 2000. And welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Andrew, and thank you so much for having me today.
So, Margaret, tell us about what brought you to the law.
So I came out of Yale Law School on a very conventional path. I went and clerked in federal district court, learned the ropes of federal litigation there, and went into a white shoe, what back then we called white shoe law firm in New York City. I was there for several years as a litigation associate doing business and securities related litigation. I was fortunate to work with extremely talented lawyers who were also super ethical and just lovely, wonderful people to work with. But after a few years, it became clear to me that I was not going to be spending the next 30 years of my life doing securities litigation. I think I had always pictured being a lawyer as having a person as a client, which many lawyers don't. They represent businesses or they do transactions and they're excellent at that, and that's the right fit for them. But I was really hankering for that relationship with the client and the work that reverberates in a person's life directly. So I started looking around and I did what for my background was really an unusual path and went into matrimonial law. I find it very interesting. The importance to the client makes it feel very important to me, which is very energizing for me. And it's a very special role to accompany someone through what is just a huge and sometimes very scary and uncertain transition in life. And I value that. I find it really rewarding to work with clients in that juncture in their life.
And so you've been practicing 25 years in just this area. What has kind of changed or what hasn't changed, since we're out of this white shoe environment dealing with, securities litigation into that personal component? How has your practice morphed from that starting point in 2000 to today? Or is it,
Sure.
No, we are who we are. This is the way this gets done, and we're just great at it.
So all of that business background, all of that litigation background, that comes in and we use that. But then there's the family law component, which in its best iteration is really about taking the problem the family system has right now. We're going to move into separate households. We're going to become financially separate from each other. Maybe there are children involved where some arrangement is needed. How are we going to co-parent our children? And the first approach is going to be, can we work this out to meet the needs of my client, create a settlement, which, by the way, the other party is not going to agree to unless it also meets their needs, to do what's best for the party's children, guided by the parties, the parents, and come up with a settlement that really serves the interests of everyone involved. And that's not to say that we aren't advocating and fighting for our clients. We absolutely are. But when you want to do a private, ideally amicable, reasonably amicable deal, you have to think about who's on the other side of the table. Mm-hmm. Because
I imagine that's a tough sell for you.
It just depends. If I find that when you really listen and you're not just thinking about your arguments, but you're really listening, you can figure out what the other side needs. What are their priorities? and then talk about a way to address that. I mean, nobody's likely to get everything they want in a divorce, okay? Like, we all know that. The question is, how much of what's really important do you need to get so you can turn the page and go on and be on a good footing in the next chapter of your life? And I mean, I try not to use the word fair, honestly, because fair means something different to everyone. People can disagree in good faith about what is fair. So I'm really thinking about what my client is entitled to under the law, right? We have law in New York. It gives us at least a framework for what someone might be entitled to. But I'm also thinking about what's going to work, right? Well, what is going to get the whole system of the dispute to a place where they're really reorganized into their separate lives in the best possible way.
For sure. And when we first started chatting today, we were talking about a particular either client story that you wanted to share. Is there something you wanted to touch on?
Sure, absolutely. So I was thinking about this, and this would be an example of how we like to work when we can. Now, if we have to go to court and have a street fight, we're all trained in that. We know how to do that. We'll do that. But when we get the chance to really work creatively to solve problems, frankly, it's more fun for us. So I had a client who he and his wife had decided much earlier in the marriage to put some of their assets in trust for their child, including a home, which was one of their largest assets. Fast forward, guess what? A lot of things in life didn't work out the way they were planned and anticipated to work out. And now they had their home in a trust, and really most of their assets outside the trust were highly illiquid. And that did not work well for them in the divorce. So we worked with their trust and estates attorneys to exercise a right of substitution to put some of the more illiquid assets into the trust, bring the home out so that they could liquidate the home, which was what they really needed to do. And that got them to a place that was, now we could make a deal because there was enough liquidity to make both people secure. But that took really studying the trust documents, working collaboratively with co-counsel to figure out, is there a way? How can we do this? So we found a way.
Not only that, those illiquid assets leaving aside the house were likely investment assets that would continue to appreciate outside of, the estate tax from the trust standpoint.
Absolutely,
to the benefit of the children.
Absolutely. It was, I think, a win-win-win. And that was the intention, was that they can let those assets grow. No one was ever going to look to those for probably a couple of decades. So there was time for those assets to run their course, have their liquidity events, and turn into, something that might be usable when the trust was needed. Absolutely.
Interesting. So everyone, today, my guest, Margaret Donohoe, she's a partner at Donohoe Talbert in New York City. Margaret, so that people can get in touch with you, can you share your contact information?
Absolutely. So my email address is first initial, last name at Donohoe Talbert. So that's mdonohoe@donohoetalbert.com. And of course, you can find our website at donohoetalbert.com with any other contact info.
Wonderful. And people can find you in social?
LinkedIn, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond. And Margaret's a perfect example of that, from her creativity and her experience, for sure. If you're an attorney or know one that goes above and beyond, feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600, 914-666-6600. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew. Very, very nice to talk to you today. Take care.